So we're honored to have Dr. Ernesto Zedillo here with us tonight. As I'm sure you all know, he served as the President of Mexico from 1994 to 2000. Since leaving office, he's been a leading voice on globalization, particularly its impacts on relations between developed and developing nations. He's been a member of the High-Level Task Force on Climate Change, the High-Level Commission on the Legal Empowerment of the Poor, and was appointed to be the UN Special Envoy to the 2005 World Summit by Secretary General Kofi Annan. In 2008, Dr. Zedillo chaired an independent commission to report on the role of the International Atomic Energy Agency out to 2020 and beyond. He served on the International Commission for the Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, and of course, he's a Global Zero signatory. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Zedillo.
Thank you, Andrew, for your introduction and for the good work you are doing at Global Zero. And of course, I am very grateful for the invitation, which I literally got this morning. Although they use a different term, let me put it in English, some of you will understand well. I was asked to be like the warm-up band. That is why I'm here, because he's busy at another meeting, but he will come shortly. But I do it very happily, because this is a very important cause. Of course, when I look at you, somehow I feel that Senator Kerry and myself will be speaking to the converted. And that is, in a way, a bad news, because what we really want is to speak aloud to the non-converted, but it's also a good news, because if we had had this meeting just a few years ago, probably we would have had a crowd of only 1/3 of what we have here tonight, and I think that's absolutely a great news. And I think I cannot overemphasize why it is a great news that people like you are interested in this topic, because you are aware that nuclear weapons are the only ones ever invented that have the capacity to wholly destroy life on Earth. And the arsenals possessed by a few countries, including this one, are able to do so many times over. 20 years after the end of the Cold War, there are at least, I think Andrew mentioned that, still 23,000 nuclear warheads with a combined blast capacity equivalent to 150,000 Hiroshima nuclear bombs. 150,000. Nearly half of all warheads are still operationally deployed, and the US and Russia each have over 2,000 weapons on dangerously high alert, ready to be launched immediately in the event of perceived attack, within a decision window of only between 4 and 8 minutes for each president. They have between 4 and 8 minutes to say yes or not. When they say yes, you can think what will happen. And with more nuclear armed states now, and more system vulnerabilities, not less vulnerabilities, the near miracle of no-nuclear exchange, let me tell you, will not continue ceteris paribus in perpetuity. The nuclear non-proliferation treaty system has been, as you all know, under severe strain in recent years, with the International Atomic Energy Agency struggling with verification, compliance, and enforcement failures, and also backward steps happening in the world's most volatile regions. India and Pakistan joined the undeclared Israel as a fully fledged nuclear armed states in '98. North Korea is likely to have already some half-dozen nuclear explosive devices, and Iran probably now has weapon-making capability. I'm not saying that they have nuclear weapons, but I think at this point they have weapon-making capability with real potential for generating a regional proliferation surge should it choose to cross the weaponization red line. You also know that terrorist groups exist with the intent and capacity to create massive nuclear destruction. And we also have to take into account that the likely rapid expansion of civil nuclear energy in the decades ahead, not least in response to climate change concerns, will present some additional proliferation and security risks. Let me tell you, keeping the status quo is not an option. As the Canberra Commission declared it in the 1990s, so long as any state has nuclear weapons, others will want them. So long as any such weapons remain, it defies credibility that they will not one day be used by accident, miscalculation, or design. And any such use would be catastrophic. I insist, it is sheer luck that the world has escaped such catastrophe until now. It is for this reason that people like myself, unfortunately many others, like those in Global Zero, are convinced that no effort should be spared to both strengthen the non-proliferation regime as well as to put the world on the way to total nuclear weapons disarmament and abolition. The Center for the Study of Globalization, where I work, has devoted significant resources to this cause. People ask me why we do that, because after all we are economists, humble economists. We speak about trade, financial globalization, international migration, global public goods. I see some of my students around here. Hi. I said, why do you worry about nuclear weapons? You are a trade economist or something like that. I said, well, you know, it's very simple. You ask me, what is the only thing that with all certainty will stop and destroy the process of global integration that has given so much prosperity and I would say stability and peace to the world? My answer is a nuclear weapon exchange. In fact, I believe if that were to happen, well, it could be possible, as I said before, that would be the ultimate threat to humanity. So if I care about globalization, if I care about trade, if I care about prosperity, of course I should care about not believing that the nuclear threat could materialize. So it is consistent with our Center for the Study of Globalization's mission that over the years we have brought thinkers in this field to address people like you, this community, on the nuclear question. We are very proud that it was with our support that Professor Jonathan Schell, I know that there are some students of his here, this audience, now teaches here every spring since 2004. Over the years, we have brought to our university personalities in this field like Hans Blix. You remember the Blix Commission? Well, he was also director of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We brought Mohammad El-Baradei, who was Director General of the agency and got the Nobel Peace Prize. And we got also Professor Tom Chelling, who also got a Nobel Prize, this time in economics, for his work on nuclear issues. And it was also in this spirit that a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we held a major conference which we titled Nuclear Weapons, the Greatest Peril to Civilization, a conference to imagine our world without them. And actually in that conference we had some of the seeds of the Nuclear Zero movement, because the guys who founded the movement were here, and we talked a lot about that. And I think being here with all these experts was a big impulse to these movements. But perhaps, more importantly, we have dedicated resources to support the generation of ideas, of concrete ideas, to strengthen the non-proliferation and disarmament regimes. And I am particularly pleased with two international collaborations that have emerged from here and that have had some impact, well, not so much yet, on the real policy work. First, we answered a request, and that was mentioned by Andrew, by the International Atomic Energy Agency to chair an international commission charged with producing a set of concrete recommendations to empower, to strengthen, to reinvigorate the International Atomic Energy Agency. And we presented those recommendations to the General Council of the agency, and we talked to leaders, to do something to convince them that it is important and will continue to be important to support the agency, which has as responsibility, as chief responsibility, to oversee the compliance of the non-proliferation regime. Perhaps of equal or greater importance is the work that we have done for the International Commission on Nuclear Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, of which we were recently part. This commission worked for 2 years. It was established in 2008 or so, and we worked for 1.5 years, and we finished our report in December. We presented this report, Eliminating Nuclear Threats, a Practical Agenda for Global Policy Makers. Well, all of us agreed that our commission role would have to be more than just another call to attention or a call to action. That we needed not just to identify the problems and point in the general direction of the right solutions, but rather to bring all the complex, interrelated pieces together. And believe me, they are very complex. We thought that our mission was to analyze in more detail both the opportunities and constraints that would be involved in moving forward, and try to map with more precision who would be doing what, when, and how in responding to the whole range of nuclear threats and risks with which the world is now confronted. Central to our approach was that whatever we proposed had to be realistic and pragmatic, recognizing that many obstacles, political, practical, and technical, that would need to be surmounted. We worked, as I said, for 1.5 years, delivered our report last December, and since then we have made a big effort to present it to governments, the media, to civil society organizations, and other groups around the world. Of course, we presented it at the Global Zero meeting in Paris a few months ago. And of course, if you want to consult the report, I will give you a website. But the report, let me tell you, springs from the basic idea that the critical need is to finally transform perceptions of the role and utility of nuclear weapons, from occupying a central place in strategic thinking to being seen as quite marginal and ultimately wholly unnecessary. And this point is not an insignificant intellectual challenge. Some of you may take some seminars here, perhaps the One Strategy seminar, and you will see that there are, people that think very seriously about these roles, about these issues, and that they believe that actually nuclear weapons are necessary for security, not only for security reasons, but to prevent precisely the use of nuclear weapons in the world. What we believe that that doctrine is wrong, and that we must defeat that belief with better reasoning and with better intellectual arguments. Despite the diverse backgrounds of the commissioners, we share the conviction that there are good answers to all the familiar deterrents and other justifications for retaining nuclear weapons. We agree that it's neither defensible nor sustainable for some states to argue that nuclear weapons are an indispensable, legitimate, and open-ended guarantor of their own and allies' security, but that others have no right to acquire them to protect their own perceived security needs. This is totally inconsistent. We concur that extended deterrence does not have to mean extended nuclear deterrence. Acknowledging that achieving a nuclear weapons-free world will be a long, complex, and formidably difficult process, we decided that such a goal would be most realistically pursued as a two-phase process, with minimization, the immediate goal, and elimination, the ultimate one. Short term, we speak of short term up to 2012, and medium term up to 2025, efforts should be focused as soon as possible on achieving a minimization point characterized by very low numbers of warheads, less than 10% of present arsenals, and agreed no first use doctrine, and forced deployments and alert status reflecting that doctrine. Since the target date for getting to zero cannot at this date be credibly specified, we propose that analysis and debate should commence now on the conditions necessary to move from the minimization point to elimination. The report provides a detailed policy agenda to meet the challenge of nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. I don't have time to repeat all the specific proposals that we have made in that document. For the purposes of this warm-up band roll for me, this preamble to Senator Kerry's visit, I just want to mention that the very first point of our comprehensive action agenda consisted of early agreement on a START follow-on treaty, which the U.S. and Russia, agreeing to deep reductions in deployed strategic weapons, addressing the issue of strategic missile defense, and starting negotiations on further deep cuts in all classes of weapons. And this was last December. We strongly endorse this objective because without its accomplishment, progress in any other aspect would be practically impossible. We also did it because we were encouraged by President Obama's speech in Prague in April of 2009 and the parallel commitment by President Medvedev of Russia. Needless to say, we were very pleased that just a few months after the publication of our report, a new START treaty was agreed by the American and the Russian president, and that the treaty indeed involves significant reductions in the number of deployed strategic weapons and vigorous verification provisions. We are also encouraged that the treaty sets the stage for yet further cuts extending to strategic weapons and non-deployed weapons. All the commissioners believe that the agreement is carefully calibrated to maintain the momentum towards a nuclear-free world, but we also believe that such momentum will be fully lost if the treaty doesn't get early ratification by both parties. Well, I do not need, if you read the newspaper, which I hope the students that you read it, well, in internet, of course. I do not need to tell you that ratification of a START by the U.S. is not in any way guaranteed. It seems to me, admittedly, a total outsider who may be totally wrong, as usual, that the political conditions in this country, to put it mildly, don't look particularly propitious for this kind of undertaking. If ratification of START is going to have a serious chance to happen, then much more must be done to educate the public on the U.S. self-interest on disarmament and non-proliferation. Much more must be done to energize the intellectual debate on the nuclear question. Much more must be done to generate a bottom-up pressure in favor of disarmament. Much more must be done to commit the political leaders of these and many other countries with this crucial cause. It is for all these reasons that I celebrate that Senator Kerry, when he finishes his other engagement, and Senator Kerry is one of those committed political leaders, today visits our campus, and hopefully he will give us a candid assessment and hopefully optimistic assessment on where the process of START ratification stands at this crucial moment. Because if there is no ratification of START, I think we will be put back a few years in this novel, crucial, decisive cause of humanity. Thank you. Yes, questions?
At the beginning of your talk, you spoke of that we no longer have a need for nuclear weapons as a deterrent to attacks or other nations gaining them. Could you expand on that and discuss that in terms of Iran, Korea, and other possible nuclear threats?
I think the arguments are manifold, but you are making reference to to concrete cases. And I think the fact that these countries are being told that they are being deterred by nuclear weapons is the main reason why they are trying to acquire nuclear weapons. So it seems to me that it is rather stupid to believe that you are going to convince Iran and North Korea about not having nuclear weapons with that argument. That's, a sure way to get them. Because they will believe then that the only way which they can prevent that kind of attack is by also having nuclear weapons. And in those cases, even worse, perhaps make sure that others have them with their support. So I think the argument is, for me, is totally absurd.
So looking at it from the point of view of another country, say from the point of view of Israel, Israel is in a region where most countries are not particularly friendly with it, and Israel since since the 80s about not openly, but kind of an open secret that Israel is probably a nuclear power. What would you say about Israel's concerns for its security and how its having nuclear weapons could deter those countries in that region from attacking it? And keeping in mind that since Israel has had it since the 80s, there have been no particular incidents of Israel threatening another country openly in any case with that.
Well, several considerations. Well, I think Israel has its full right to preserve its security, and I think the international community has the responsibilities to support Israel. But I think the argument is more in the sense that the international community, and particularly the most powerful players in the international community, must do more to achieve real peace in the Middle East. Real peace between Israel and its Arab neighbors, because at the end that is what will be best for Israel and its security, and also for Israel's neighbors. I think the situation in the Middle East is not really an argument long term for Israel to keep its nuclear weapons. I think it's a very powerful argument to put pressure in all parts so that a real effective settlement of all these conflicts and differences are achieved. I think people in Israel, people who think well in Israel, should realize that this is not a sustainable equilibrium, because the argument of nuclear deterrence, I mean, as I explained before, is self-defeating. Rather, sooner than later, somebody else in the region is going to get the weapons, and you don't want to think about that work. It would be terribly dangerous, and once we have crossed that threshold, I don't know who can guarantee security for Israel.
Looking aside from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, looking at it more from like an Arabic point of view,
notice I didn't speak of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's bigger than that. It's Israel-Arabs.
Do you believe that would have to involve a regime change in certain countries, or do you think it would be possible to convince current regimes to go along with
I hope this idea of regime changing is discredited. I think we should eliminate that word from our vocabulary. Because the last time that this country tried to do a regime change, it hasn't been a good experience for this country.